More than 400 wildfires are burning across the country right now, the majority of them in Quebec, Alberta, and BC. Tens of thousands of people have been evacuated from their homes. How much worse can these fires get? And does the federal government have enough resources to keep supporting provinces? I spoke to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Stephen Guilbeault, earlier this morning. Minister Guilbeault, nice to see you this morning. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so there are, I think, over 400 wildfires now burning across several provinces, including the province you're in, the Northwest Territories.
Yeah.
How long is this going to go on? How much worse is it going to be, do you think?
It's hard to tell, but what our scientists are telling us is we will likely have very hot and dry conditions throughout the month of June, most likely July and August, which means that it is likely we will continue to be faced with a difficult summer in terms of forest fires.
You obviously know that provincial resources are stretched thin. How about federal resources and the ability to tap on other nations and other places to come and help?
So we have spoken with the Canadian Armed Forces, and we're confident that when called upon, they will be able to provide resources to provinces or territories that request it. And so far, we've responded to all of the requests we've received. We are, in fact, receiving also a lot of international help. Many different countries, obviously, the United States, South Africa, a number of European countries, France, Portugal, all the way to New Zealand and Australia. We will likely continue to be calling upon some of our international colleagues and friends to support it throughout the summer. Obviously, it will depend. We're not sure that we will continue to have such severe forest fires as we're seeing now, but the weather conditions are such, and the prediction are such that it is likely going to continue to be very difficult.
Minister Blair, who I assume you're working closely with on all of this, has been talking to the head of FEMA in the U.S. and he says, and he told CBC Radio's The House, that there seems to be an openness to taking sort of like a NORAD approach to fighting wildfires, a continental approach. What would be the benefit of that? Do you think that is something that needs to happen?
Well, it's certainly about wildfires, but in the last year, Rosemary, we've had the worst hurricane on our Atlantic coast, Fiona. We've had historic floodings with atmospheric rivers in the province of British Columbia, and now these forest fires. And we already know that for Nova Scotia, for Quebec, soon probably in Alberta, it's going to be the worst year ever for forest fires. So the conversations we've been having with Minister Blair, as well as many other colleagues and the Prime Minister, is maybe we need to look at a different way of responding to extreme weather events in different ways than we've had in the past. When provinces have needed help, we've relied on the CAF, and the CAF has and continues to support those provinces and territories. But maybe we need a new force, a new unit that's dedicated to both emergency preparedness, but also emergency response.
So that's the response piece. Let's talk a little bit about the prevention piece. One of the issues, or one of the ways to prevent wildfires, is forest management. And I guess there are some questions around whether Canada's forest management is adequate, and whether there needs to be a bigger role for controlled burns. What would you agree that forest management has been perhaps neglected and needs to be better managed going forward?
I think I wouldn't say it's been neglected, but I would say that we can always do better. And when we announced just last December, when we announced the federal action plan as part of the national adaptation strategy, so how do we better prepare Canadians to face the impacts of climate change? We announced close to $300 million for forest management and helping to try and prevent forest fires. So we know we can can do more when it comes to that. And this is something we need to do with provinces and territories. The federal government has an important role to play, but we're not the only ones who can and should be acting. So I wouldn't say we've neglected it. And there's a lot of scientists and experts don't all agree on controlled burn, for example. There's a lot of science that needs to evolve, that is evolving on this issue as well. So we want to be part of this. We want to fund research, but also we know that there are things we could do that could help to either reduce the number of forest fires or reduce their impacts, which is why we've already started investing in those initiatives.
Parks Canada says there's only been 23 controlled burns this year, and people that believe that there needs to be more of this say it's just way too hard to get permission to do them.
It is, as I said, it is a complicated and sometimes controversial technique. Some people really believe in it. Some other people say, no, actually, it's counterproductive. You don't want to do that. I'm not a forestry expert. I'm not a scientist. So I rely on the advice of people who work either for Parks Canada. Obviously, Natural Resources Canada has an important role to play on that as well.
Let's just end on climate change. You know, obviously, when you see these things happening, you start to see what climate change is really about. You feel it, you're living it, and I wonder whether, in your mind, it sort of is an opportunity to say that the urgency behind fighting climate change and trying to reach our targets of net zero by 2050 is more intense, and we actually need to pick up the kind of work that we're doing as a country.
As you know, I have been a climate change activist for most of my adult life. Yes. You never want to be proven right when it comes to climate change. But unfortunately, what I was speaking about what we've seen just in the last year in Canada, it just proves the point that we have entered the era of climate change, that this is likely what we're seeing, not just in terms of forest fires, but just a month and a half ago, we were talking about floodings in different parts of the country. Yeah. And before that, it was ice storm at the end of the winter. So this is the new normal. We need to be better prepared, but we also, as you rightly point out, we need to do more when it comes to tackling our climate change pollution. That's what our government is doing, but we need to accelerate the pace of deploying measures. And it would be amazing if all political parties in Canada, if all jurisdiction were willing to step up to the plate with us to do that.
Okay, Minister Guilbeault, thank you for making the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. Take care.